Hey everybody, how y'all doing? People good? Oh, here's my face. Hello, hello. I'll wait one more moment and then we'll get started. So you can all get ready by pulling up a session file that is something that you've worked on lately that you like. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to show you my screen. Okay, so today we are going to work on effects. It's the beginning of sound design, making your own sounds, colors, textures, and I'm going to introduce you to a handful of the effects that I use the most often, and I'll give you a quick tour of them. We're not going to go super deep on any one effect. This is going to be an introduction. We're also going to cover MIDI mapping, which is how you can control different parameters in Ableton with your MIDI controller. And we're also going to do envelopes and automation, which is how you can make different parameters of your effects change automatically over time. So I've got some notes here about effects that I've written that start with these cats. So we'll come back to this in a bit, but there's more detailed notes than usual this week about the things that we're going to talk about. So those are in the class folder. Aren't those cats great? My favorite is compression. Okay, so we're going to do things a little more interactively or a little more call and response here. So I'm going to start just with an auto filter. So I've got a track up that I made for one of the homeworks. You can pull this if you don't have something to work on yourself. I sent the link in the email. But so my first idea is to use this auto filter. So I'm going to introduce you. This might be the effect that I use the most after EQ and compression, which we'll talk about later. So auto filter, this is the simplest introduction to the spectrum graph. So if you haven't seen one of these things before, this is the graph of low to high sounds, low to high frequencies. So below 100 is like the rumble of a kick drum. Up here, you don't really hear if you're a grown-up. You only hear if you're a child. And the human voice lies kind of in this range. Your basses down here, noise, hi-hats, and stuff up here. So when we filter, we create a graph shape that changes the volume of particular frequencies. So I'll just show you on this strings track. How did I get here? First, I went to audio effects in the browser. And then I chose auto filter. And I dragged it onto the track that I'm working on. You can do this either in session view or arrangement view, but since I've already made an arrangement for this song, we'll be working here mostly today. So here's a filter. I don't think. Yeah, anybody else hearing an echo? I'm not. I don't think it's something I'm doing intentionally here. Am I monitoring anywhere? No. Laura, you could try disconnecting and reconnecting, or just wait a moment. I got some echo the other day and it just went away. Okay, back to the auto filter. So what this blue line is showing is that it's going to cut all the sounds above this point, above the blue line. So everything under here is going to pass through, and everything over here is going to get cut. So this kind of filter is called a high cut or a low pass. And it sounds like this. I'm going to solo this track. If you haven't seen this before, there's an S button over here. You click that, and it solos the track, which means all of the other tracks are muted. You can't hear them. We're only going to hear this one track. And I'm going to select a little bit of time and press Command L to loop this area. So we're just going to listen for a moment to hear. So this is a sound I'm sure that you have heard, especially with this resonance turned up a little bit. So you have a couple of different options for the filter shape here. You can cut the highs with this high cut filter. You can cut the lows with this low cut filter. You can let through only a single band. You can cut a single band. Not the most noticeable one. And this is morph, which lets you have a knob that morphs between all the different kinds of filter, which is a pretty cool sound. So why don't you grab an auto filter from MIDI effects, from audio effects, sorry, drop it on one of your tracks, solo that track, loop an area by selecting and Command L, and play with the auto filter and hear the sounds change. I'll give you 2 minutes to do that and we'll come back. Okay, circling back to here. Um, let's see, I'm seeing some good questions here. I will get to those in a moment. So let's talk about, let's just introduce automation right away. So this sound that I'm doing here where it sweeps up is really common, right? The opening of a filter. Um, if we want to do it, let's see, we can record this or we can draw this shape of this change in order to make that sweep happen automatically. So first we're going to learn to draw that shape. Automation means creating these graphs with these lines that can control any parameter on any effect over time in the arrangement. So first you need to know how to show and hide the automation lines. You do that just by pressing the key A. Press the letter A. And if A doesn't work, it's because you have the keyboard on, which means that A is the note C on your keyboard. So you can turn this off and hit the letter A, and you'll see these pink lines appear. So these pink lines correspond with whatever the last control you touched was. So I'm going to click here on filter, which is this thing that slides left and right. And take a look. In these boxes, it's telling me on the device auto filter here, the frequency knob is selected. I've clicked the frequency knob. It's telling me the pink line here refers to the auto filter's frequency knob. And then I can just draw a shape. You click to make a dot, drag a dot. You can add extra dots in between if you want to fine tune it. If you end up with dots that you don't want, you click them to make them go away. Option click will let you do a curve. So now I've got this, watch. As this plays, the frequency knob turns as this graph goes up. Great, so why don't you take a minute and show the automation with the letter A, click on frequency, and draw yourself a shape and listen to how that works. Whenever you've automated any parameter, it gets this red dot. So this just shows you that it's going to be changing automatically. Okay, I'll answer a couple of questions here. Sorry about the samples in my project, by the way. I didn't know that this was going to happen. I recommend you work from something else. And if that's as simple as just like grabbing a couple of samples and looping them to work on, go for it. Cool. Let's come back here. I want to show you a couple more things about editing these lines. So first of all, you can copy and paste any of these sections. So I can select, copy, paste over here. I can also select it and do Command D to duplicate if you want to make a pattern loop. If you want to insert a specific shape, you can Control click and check this out. Like if I want a sine wave, there's a list here of basic waveform shapes. And then you can drag to adjust the top and the bottom of them. Also, you can select any period of time. And if you get your mouse close to the line, but not quite on it, it'll select the whole line and you can drag and get an easy bar down like that. And you can also copy and paste onto different tracks. And if you've got too many nodes and you want to just start fresh, you can select them all and delete, or go to that parameter and Control click and say delete automation. But I did want to keep that, so I'm going to go here. Okay, so I'm going to show you one more thing about autofilter because it's something that pops up on a bunch of different effects, and it's just kind of a basic synthesis concept, and that's the LFO. So LFO stands for low frequency oscillator. An oscillator is anything that alternates, like a sine wave oscillates from -1 to 1. And at low frequency means it's going slow, like less than 20 cycles per second. Anything alternating faster than 20 cycles per second, we actually hear as pitch. So all of the sounds that we get are oscillations faster than 20 cycles per second. 20 cycles per second being also pretty much the bottom of this graph. So below that amount, we get time that we hear not as pitch, but as rhythm. So the LFO on a filter is going to cycle between applying the filter and not applying the filter. If you turn up the amount, this is the rate at which this shape is going to happen. So we've got a sine wave chosen. So we're going to turn up and then turn down and then turn up the presence of the filter. And we're going to do it at 0.11 cycles per second. We can click this little 16th note here and link it to the meter. So let me play a bit with some drums. Sixteenth notes, triplets. So why don't you go spend a minute and play with the LFO. You want to turn up the amount pretty high, choose a shape, change the rate, and make sure that there's some filter happening. If you're trying to LFO and there's nothing, and there's no shape here, then you won't hear anything. So we'll come back to that in about 2 minutes, and I'll answer questions in the meantime. Yes, great question, Devin. This is good for everybody. If you have something automated and then you change the knob, your most recent control of that knob takes over. So see how once I hit the frequency knob, the pink dot goes away, and then I get this dotted line at that level rather than my line that I drew. What we bring into play here with automation is another orange button. So remember how we had an orange button over here that meant, play me what's in the arrangement, play what I'm looking at. The same thing applies here. So this is return to the automation that you drew. This is a little complicated now, but it comes in really handy when you're doing a live performance and you want to make changes to things on the fly as it goes. That's why this works this way. But yeah, whenever you see this orange button turn on, you can click it and then come back to all of your automation. The last two waves on the LFO are random, and I forget the difference between them. My guess is that one is linear interpolation, where it jumps from one level to the next, and the next one is no interpolation and then linear interpolation, but I actually do not know. It may be like smoother transitions between the random values. I'm not sure. Got to look it up. Okay, cool. Let's come back. So I want to take a short detour and talk about MIDI mapping. So this, unfortunately, is for only those of you who have a MIDI controller attached that has knobs or sliders. So if you don't have one of those, stay tuned and see what's possible with such a device. Okay, so you can map any knob or slider in Ableton to any knob or slider on your controller. And this is especially great for effects. So the first thing you need to do is turn on the setting in your preferences to allow this to happen. So under Live, Preferences, Link MIDI. You want to look down here at your MIDI ports and see input. This is the name of my keyboard, so you'll see your keyboard here. And you need to turn the remote column to on. This means that you're letting that MIDI instrument remote control your program. So I'll give you a moment to do this. If you sync, I got a question about sync. If your MIDI controller sends a clock, like has its own metronome, then you can turn on sync and Ableton will synchronize its metronome with it. Okay, once you've turned on remote, close this window and notice that there's a MIDI button in the top right corner here. This is the MIDI map mode. So when you turn on this button, everything that you can control with your MIDI controller turns blue. And so you can click on a control and it'll select, and then touch a knob on your MIDI controller. And you should get something new in the list that corresponds here. So you can map a lot of things at once. You just click on the thing and then touch the controller, and click on the thing and touch the controller. And then when you're done mapping, press the MIDI button again. It's also Command M. No, mappings, I got a question from Devin, are mappings specific to a device? No, mappings are not specific to a device. Mappings, let's see, those things that I've connected are going to work no matter where I am in the program. This knob controls this knob. So this starts to get really powerful for live performance and also just getting more human kind of breathing, flowing change in our arrangements. So I'm going to click play and just play with some of these knobs on my. So if you've got a MIDI keyboard, spend a moment mapping a couple of controls of your auto filter to your knobs and play around with it for a minute. Okay, come on back. I'm going to show you now one other way to get automation changes, and that's by recording them in. So let's see, I'm going to answer Alyssa's question. How do you reset or erase a mapped knob? You can click the MIDI button and delete any of the mappings that you want here. Okay, so recording automation. This you can do whether you have a MIDI keyboard or not. So this is for everybody. Um, what you want to do when you're recording automation, take a look. I'll demonstrate and then come back. So you can record any changes that you make here. So remember when we did in our very first assignment, we played some tracks, we changed volume levels, we changed sends, we changed panning while it was playing, and we recorded those changes here. This is the exact same thing happening. So just a couple of things to keep in mind. One is you have to hit record in order to record those automation changes. This can be a little dangerous if you have something else armed. If I had any of these tracks armed and I hit record, then I'm going to record over on that track. So first thing you want to do is make sure that none of the tracks are armed. Then the second thing you need to make sure is that this button is turned on. This is called the automation arm. And when it's on, then it will record automation. And when it's off, it won't. So those two things, make sure no tracks are armed, make sure automation arm is turned on, and then you can just go to town, hit record, and record changes on any track. I'm gonna go to the sax and change the track volume. I'm gonna, anyway, I don't have more effects here yet, but you can, anything that you touch is gonna get recorded. So everybody, take a moment and record some automation and ask me questions if you need to. Anybody let me know if you need to see me, if you need to see that again. Got a question from Pascal that I don't think I've covered with everybody. So the metronome is up here, and there's a triangle drop-down menu that lets you choose a count in, how many bars you want, and you can choose sound and give some more control of how it divides time. Okay, is everybody getting some luck recording some automation? Great. Ilko, we'll have to circle back. I can look at yours after if you are still having trouble. Okay, so that's autofilter. It's pretty simple. I show it to you first just because it's simple. I want to show you another one now. Let's look at delay. So I'm going to put the delay on my saxophone track. Oh yeah, take a look first. This is the structure of each of these effects. You can open it up and it'll give you presets for those effects. All of these are corpus effects and all of these are the same device. It's all a compressor, but they're just different settings. So you can either get the preset one by grabbing the top delay itself, or you can pick a specific preset. And I'll remind you that there's this hot swap button, which is also the letter Q. And you can hit that or hit the letter Q and it'll automatically take you to other presets. And you can very quickly listen through lots of different options. So let's do that with this saxophone track. I'm going to solo the saxophone. Cool. So I'll give you a little introduction to delay. Delay is a stereo delay, meaning it has a different echo. Let's see, delay means echo. Let's visit our cats. Delay takes one thing and makes many of it through making echoes. The delay device has a different delay line for the left ear and the right ear. So you can have, echoes of different times happening in the two ears. You've got two different modes, sync and time. Sync is going to synchronize it to our metronome, and each one of these numbers is a number of 16th notes. So against our drums, now we hear this pulse at a quarter note level. Yeah, so you can synchronize or you can switch to time, and then you just have raw milliseconds to think about. So think about a delay. Think about an echo. You have your initial sound, and then it repeats a little bit softer, and then it repeats a little bit softer until it goes away. So the amount softer that it gets each time is the feedback percentage. So if I set feedback to 50%, then the second echo of my sound is half the volume, and my third echo is half that volume. So a high feedback means it's going to echo for a long time. I'll just play one of these guys. Echoes for a long time. You could even have it echo forever. So quick tour, there's also a filter. This is the same as on the auto filter. Underneath the blue line is what gets to pass through. So now we are saying cut all of the low frequencies, and I just want to have echo in the high frequencies. See how it's much brighter there? This is what you can use to keep the echo from cluttering up and making things thick and hard to listen to. You can just filter out some of the mid-range and you'll get a clearer sound. One other thing to notice is the wet dry knob. Dry, wet knob. Most effects have one of these. Dry means the signal without the effect on it. So if I turn it all to 0, then we get no echo. If we turn it up to wet, we get only the echoes. And then some mixture is really what you want. So a good rule of thumb in lots of these situations is to turn it up so that you can really hear it and appreciate it, and then turn it down a little bit. You want lots of these things to be just a little bit subliminal, and that's a good rule of thumb. Just get it to where you're really enjoying it, and then turn it down a touch. Ping pong means that it's going to bounce the echoes from left to right ear back and forth. So it's a little hard to tell in this situation, but it gives a really nice stereo motion effect. And then the last thing I want to point you to is just repitch mode is cool. When you change values of the delay time, it does a pitch shift in order to get to the new speed. So that's fun. Okay, I'd like you to pick a track of your own and put a delay on it and try different settings and enjoy it. I'll get to some of these questions. Cool, let's come back. I hope you're getting some good echoes going on. The next one I want to show you is the saturator. I use this a lot, and it's down here. What a saturator does is adds a little bit of distortion. It boosts the volume, and it takes the excess volume that it's added and turns it into warmth, basically. So I've got this guitar chord that I just want to get a little warmer. So the saturator, I'm going to drag it and drop it anywhere on this track. And your preset. So we've got a drive knob, which adds this distortion. It like turns up the volume in a way that instead of creating like ugly clipping, it makes kind of nice clipping. There are different flavors of clipping, of distortion that you can get here. These are all pretty extreme versions of it because I've turned up the drive so much so we can really hear it. But just a little bit of this can add warmth, especially to synthesizers. I highly recommend putting this on any sound that just sounds really digital and clean and not organic. This is a great tool for making things sound a little more organic. Turn up the drive. That will boost the volume as well. So you might want to compensate by turning down the output a little bit. And again, we have a dry wet knob, so we can mix in some of the original sound with some of the distorted sound if we want to moderate it. So we're getting close to the end of the hour. I'm just going to give you a quick introduction to a couple more effects now that you've seen how to put an effect on a track, how to automate it with hitting A and drawing lines, or by recording in automation. I'm just going to show you a couple more of my favorite effects and then send you off to go exploring on your own. The first place I want you to explore is in audio effects racks. So these are just cool combination effects. There's a way that you can combine many different effects into one device with just a couple of knobs. And people have designed some really cool ones in here. I especially like in the modulation and rhythmic category and the performance and DJ. A really elegant one that I like is called Fade to Gray, which I'm going to put on the master track to show you how it works. So yeah, you can put effects on your master track down here or over here, and all the sound in the project is going to flow through that. So this is a combination of just an EQ and a delay, and it sounds like this. I'll put everything on. It cuts the low frequencies and makes this kind of endless delay happen. And then come back. Cool. So take a look in the audio effects racks for kind of complicated combo effects. Auto pan lets you send sound swirling from one ear to the other, back and forth. So like here's I'll put it on my strings. This you need stereo sound, and you're probably not getting stereo sound from me for. But yeah, try auto pan. It's gonna send the sound moving left and right through your ears. Beat repeat is really awesome. I'm gonna put beat repeat on the drum track. and just pick one of these presets. You can turn on and off an effect with this button. Everyone has it, and it activates and deactivates it. I'm going to turn up my drums so we can hear beat repeat. Beat repeat takes little slices of whatever it's hearing and repeats them afterwards to make little drum fills. So check that out, brain dance. Beat repeat. If you're playing a bass or a guitar electric into Ableton, cabinet are devices that emulate speakers to give a little bit of a more natural sound. EQ8. I think you should use EQ8 on every track. We're going to go deep in EQ and in compression in a later class about mixing. So hold on that, but just know that I think pretty much every track you ever make, you're going to want to put an EQ on it, and you're going to want to cut some of the sound that you don't need, usually low rumble, and maybe also cut some of the high end if there's extra noise, and bring out parts of the sound that sound good, and cut some of the parts of the sound that don't sound so good. But yeah, we'll get deep into this in our mixing class. Erosion adds some noise. Which can be nice to make low sounds have just a little ping up high. Let's see, flanger. We can look at our cats for flanger. Flanger puts a kind of a, I don't know, it's like a 70s sound. You've heard this. Kind of puts that inside of a sound. There we go. Grain delay is really fun. It takes little tiny samples of the sound called grains, and you can transpose them and randomize them and make all kinds of chaotic stuff with grain delay. Let's see. Resonators lets you choose a couple of pitches. I'm going to put this on the drum track. Let's you choose a couple of pitches that any sound is going to resonate. So you can add pitch to unpitched things with resonators. Reverb, we've seen a little bit already. This is how you create an illusion of space. Close, far away. You've got a tuner if you've plugged in a guitar and you want to tune. If you want to make something sound like it's coming from a record player, you can use vinyl distortion, turn up a little bit of record player noise. Overdrive adds distortion. And those are pretty much the effects that I use the most. Feel free to keep exploring on your own. Look things up online if you want to learn more about how a particular effect works. Remember to use the info view here on the left. You can show and hide it with this triangle at the bottom. And that'll tell you about any of the parameters that you have your mouse on. And the homework for this week is to take one of your tracks and just deck it out with effects. Put 2 or 3 effects on each track. See how far you can go. I think a good way to figure out what an effect does is to try to break it, put in extreme values, turn the knobs all the way, hear what's happening, try to make a guess about what's going on. And yeah, so this is just kind of a free play, go explore effects and use them to alter one of the tracks that you have. Also play with automation, MIDI mapping, and just practice those things. So thanks. I'm going to stick around for another half hour or so and answer questions. And otherwise, I'm looking forward to seeing y'all next time. So we're going to meet again on Saturday. And I may revise what we're doing. I think I put on the schedule that we're going to do arranging to make a whole song, but I think we want to do one more thing first, which is just to have a day about editing and do a bunch of chopping and cutting up of things. Let's do a breakbeat. So yeah, next time we're going to do a really classic traditional electronic music practice, which is chopping up a funk drum loop and making a breakbeat. Okay, thanks. If you want to stick around, feel free to turn on your microphone to ask a question, and we'll just go one at a time. Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate it. Thanks for showing up. Boy, an hour flies by. I didn't get to envelopes. We'll do it another time. Envelopes are basically automation, but on clips. Oh, there were some questions way up high about unlinked automation. Yeah, let's go a little deeper. Let's see. Automate, add an effect to just one clip on a track. Yeah, let me show you one thing we didn't get to today. I'll just show this to everybody. On a clip, in the clip view here, which you can get to either by double clicking a clip in session view or a region here in arrangement view. There's also a way to edit the automation here. And this is really great if the automation that you want to do is something that repeats for each cycle of the clip. So down here under clip is a button that opens envelopes. It's a little obtuse, 2 dots in a line, but not really, because that's what we're doing, right? We're making these nodes and we're making lines between them. So that's how you can remember. Open this up and then you get this panel for envelopes. And it works the same way. We've got 2 menus. And the top menu is the list of all of the things, all of the devices in play here. We've got the clip, which is all of this stuff. So watch this. Where am I? I'm on the strings. Yeah. So I've chosen clip, transposition. So this is how I can automate this knob. You can also automate the volume. Here I'm going to do it by taking a little bit of time and making a sine wave shape and bringing up the bottom so we're not cutting all the way to 0, and then selecting it and Command D to duplicate. Gabriella, yeah, so the transpose, it is measured in semitones, but it will slide between slowly. So, and you can also use detune if you want to get in between semitones. But unfortunately, you can't automate the detune. I don't know why. That's disappointing. So envelopes, these are all the things on the clip that you can control, but everything, let's see, all of your effects are also going to show up here. So if I had like a flanger here, and I'm going to pick something wild, okay. And now look at this clip. Under the first menu, I now can choose that device, Subotniks. And the second menu is the list of all of the knobs on that device. If you don't know which one it is, you can just go back to your device and click the thing that you want to control, like my dry wet knob. Click it, and then go back to the clip, and it's automatically selected, dry wet. So if I want to bring in this effect like just at the very end, I might do this, shift click to make a curve. Yeah, so envelopes are a way to make automation happen on the clip level. One last side thing here is that you can also switch to unlinked mode, which means that you can make an envelope that doesn't correspond necessarily to the same length of time. Like if I take my EQ, no, let's do auto filter since we did that already and it's easy to think about. I just have this one knob for frequency that opens and closes it. I can go to my clip, auto filter frequency is automatically selected. I can say unlinked and make my loop like 2 beats and then draw a shape. And it'll loop this shape. Maybe I make it real short. Now that's what's happening. So that's unlinked envelopes, which I saw a question about earlier. Again, if you want to get rid of everything, you just click in here, select all, hit delete, and you switch here between envelopes mode and sample mode if you want to do like warping and stuff. So you just click on these 2 panels and you go back and forth. Cool. Any other questions? Oh, I'm scrolling back and I see Jacob's question about resonate. Was this a question about the resonator on an auto filter or an EQ? Like, yeah. You're asking Jacob about the resonator instrument? I mean, the resonator effect that I showed you? that's here on the drums. Yeah. Okay, so the resonator, it resonates really, really specific pitches. Yeah, I guess you could do a resonator with these kinds of EQs where you're taking really specific pitches, making them narrow with a high Q. It's like that, but it doesn't quite sound like if you did this, it's not the same sound as this. So there must be some, I don't know if it's physical modeling, if it's like modeling a string here or what, but it's similar idea, but there's something else going on, just I can tell by the sound. Cool. Michael, I've never used Battery 4, so I can't tell you. I just got my first Native Instruments thing. I've just started using Contact after all these years. So maybe I'll get to Battery 4 at some point. But yeah, now is the season of coupon codes. I'm going a little crazy with the discount plugins at the moment. Saturator. John's asking, what's the difference between the saturator versus the pedal effect versus overdrive and distortion? I can't tell you how they're different on the inside. I'm sure they're using some kind of different math, basically. They just have different colors and different controls. So yeah, they do similar things, but they're going to give you different flavors. So try them out. Yeah, Gabriella. I don't have a ton of them at the moment, but there are a few that. So I got a question about Max for Live devices. So if you have Max for Live, which comes with Suite, and I think you can get it as an add-on for the others, then you open up to a world of lots of programmers who create their own plugins using Max MSP to design their own instruments and effects. Yeah, there's some that are really cool that I use a lot. Convolution reverb is a really nice reverb. All of these that I have, except for a couple, come with, they're like part of the basic, I forget what it's called, Ableton. Can show you real fast. Under your account, you'll have, yeah, Max for Live Essentials, I think is the one that all of these came in. Convolution reverb is a really nice reverb. LFO is fun. LFO lets you attach an LFO to any knob. So I've just mapped this LFO to that pitch knob, or, you know, to this frequency knob. So I use those a fair amount. And then I just got one that I'm really enjoying, called Factor Mini. That is pretty cool. You could look it up if you want. Let's see. Yeah, Max for Live is awesome. If you know Max, dive in. I knew Max like 15 years ago and then have totally forgotten it. So someday I will get back. Yeah, Factor Mini, I just got it because it's free for a few days. It lets you, I don't know, it's just super cool. It separates the sound into a bunch of different bands of frequency and a bunch of different bands of activity and time. And it lets you play different parts of the time with different frequencies. It's hard to explain, but it's kind of scrambles sound up in a spectral way with machine learning. So check it out. Cool. Other questions? Cool. I guess Jason All's general questions are up. Well, I'll answer C. Valentina's question. What other audio filters would you recommend for a synthesizer? Um, well, if you've got a hardware analog synth, then it's got filters on it. So that's answering a question if your filters, if you're asking about specifically a filter, like auto filter or EQ generally. Um, a filter is a really basic part of all synthesizers. Okay, so any effect. Um, I don't know. I would do maybe a little bit of reverb and delay to give some space and stereo width to it. And, you know, I definitely think you should EQ everything that you bring in. EQ 8 is what you want for that. General rule of thumb, you probably want to EQ the middle, a little space in the mid-range, because that's what tends to get really thick and tubby with all of your instruments layered. So scooping out a little space in the mid-range on most of your stuff is a smart rule of thumb. And then maybe saturator to add some warmth. Jason's question. It's about me making more electronic music now and why switch to that from more classical stuff. Yeah, so I'm a classically trained composer. I've written lots of chamber music and orchestral music and you know, music for people reading notes on paper. And I don't know. I guess a couple of reasons I'm doing more of this now. One is because what I like about classical music is working with real people, and now is a time to be alone. And so it makes a lot of sense to spend a lot of time at a computer now. So that's one thing. But also, I'm just more into being self-sufficient, and also I just did that for a long time, and now I'm doing something else. I mean, I've always been making electronic music at the same time, but I haven't really made my I haven't made my album. I haven't made my big statement. So that's what's up next. The creative process between the two is really, I mean, zoom out. It's really the same. You make a mess and you try to clean up your mess and organize what you find. I really like not. I really like thinking about creativity not as a matter of expression so much as a matter of exploration. So finding ways to make a mess in order to find new patterns and connections and sounds and combinations of things that I didn't already know about and didn't already envision is what I like to do more than try to like have a vision and bring it into the world. And that's actually a little harder to do in classical music, I find, and pretty easy to do with electronic music because, you know, turn one knob and you're in a different world that you didn't predict. And so it's really easy to make messes. And yeah, I just think make a mess, organize it, make a mess, organize it. Cut what you like, keep what you like, cut what you don't, and repeat. Any other questions? I'll do the easy one first. Change tempo between scenes. Yeah, check this out, everybody. Cool trick. On your master track in your scene list, you can rename a track to have the BPM in it. So I'm going to call this 60 BPM I'm going to call this 120 BPM. And then you can also change the time signature, 3/4. And I think you can also give it a name. You just need to have those elements in there. So like, chorus, 90 BPM. And then when you hit the scene play button, it automatically sets it up here. Right? So this is a view in which you might like DJ a party or something where you have a different songs and full songs as your clips, and you play them, fade them in and out, effects, filter them, and if you want to have a tempo change as you play, you can guarantee it that way. Jason, I think that your question about like recreating a genre versus making something interesting and personal, I don't know about innovative, but what's important to me is making things that are personal and not generic. And I think that that's still just the same process. It's about making more of a mess. It's being willing to spend more time, I think, with things that sound bad. And I think it takes keeping an optimism about your work as you go, which is to say always, when you're listening to whatever it is, to be able to say, well, it's not good now, but I can make it good. There's some I'm 3 clicks away from figuring out how to make this bad thing good. And I think you just spend time in that headspace where you're trying to break things, and then just keep an ear open for something that gets you excited, and make your music out of that. Sucked into the vortex of micromanaging and meddling. Yeah, so this is a big temptation when you're producing at a computer, and it's a joke among producers that like, you sit down to write a song and you spend 5 hours EQing a snare, and you're really proud of it, but you haven't written a song. And I don't know, I find myself falling more into that the more like plugins that I download and devices I want to play with, and also the more sophisticated my ears get about sound, because I'm always trying to like perfect the sound before I move on. And I think you just need to leave that behind. I think that separating the writing and the sound and the fussing with the sound time into 2 different parts of the process is one way to do that. And also just like not letting yourself play with all your plugins all the time is another way to do that. See, Valentino records with his keyboard synths and controllers and can improvise for an hour. Recommendations on scraping the bad parts and saving the good ones. I mean, editing in this view is really pleasing and easy. I recommend like rough chops. Say like, this is good, that bit. Oh, I've confused everything with my tempo changes here. Anyway, rough chops. That, this section was good, duplicate it a couple of times. Chop this, I want a really significant moment to happen here, cut everything out before then, and then create a lead in. Record, like, 10 layers all at the same time and then chop things away in staggered, terracing so that things enter one at a time. I think just making big moves in arrangement view and doing lots of uh, cutting of big sections, thinking fast, not trying to fine tune things at that time, but just like find the things that you like and make more of them. Use the duplicate button. Yeah, so that's a real short off the cuff answer. I can think more, and feel free to shoot me an email, anybody, if I'm dispensing with these more thoughtful questions too quickly. Gabriella, way to take notes in Ableton, like on a certain bar. No, but you can add on a certain bar a locator. So up here, below the timeline, but above the tracks, you can control click and say add locator. And then you can type and say, chorus. And this is really helpful for giving yourself a structure then to build in. Oh, C. Valentino, I have one more answer for thinking about form, which is, this is the trick I do all the time. Ooh, John, I never actually do this. Why don't you write a little more about that to explain to Gabriella, and I'll learn it too. But here's my short answer for how to organize stuff when you've made a big mess in arrangement view. I do this. I make an empty MIDI track and I select time signatures. And then I select 16 bars and I control click and I say insert MIDI clip. And then I just call that 16 bars. And I Command D a bunch of times in a row and start cutting to that. And maybe your structure doesn't ultimately have to be in 16 bar chunks, but it is a really useful starting point. I also have been keeping this library and getting my students to contribute. I'll share this with all of you. Oh, I didn't actually want to say that. Oops. You can take a song, bring it into Ableton, warp it to fit the grid, and then make empty MIDI regions, give them names, and give them colors to go alongside it to basically do an analysis of the song structure. And so you can do an analysis of some other song and then get rid of it and use these blocks to cut and paste your own blocks of content into to fill out a song structure. So when we do our arranging class, I'm going to give everybody the current draft of this project and invite people to do their own analyses, which I'll then include in here. Lots of these are done by my students from other classes. So yeah, that's how to get organized in arrangement view. Jacob, can I do what while recording live? Oh yeah, I don't know. I haven't, I don't do the note-taking thing. Let's see. Oh shoot, I'm so sorry. That's like 20 songs all playing at the same time. So while this is playing, can I add a locator? Yeah, sure can. Any other questions? If not, I'm going to sign off. I can't wait to see what you're working on. I see your head's all working. I hear your music in my dreams. Let me know. Send me stuff. Cool. Thanks, everybody. See you Saturday. Bye.